Hello and welcome to live coverage of the Apex Gaming $5,000 Modern Open at Modern Open number 1 of the Apex Con weekend here in Caldwell, Ohio. I'm Todd Tandy Anderson, joined by Ross Merriam. Say hi, Ross.
Hi, Ross.
We got 95 players in the building here to play some Nadu. Let's go.
Hey, I've been looking over the decks people are playing. There is not that much Nadu in the
Uh,
room. A lot
uh,
of players opting for
oh,
different strategies, including both players here that we're going to start with in round one, who are TJ Radizak on Jeskai Energy Control and D'Artagnan Fail on Esper Goryos. One of the recently identified, Nadu killers. I know Matt Sperling taking the deck to an unblemished 10-0 record at the recent Pro Tour, finished ninth place due to a weak limited performance, unfortunately. And then actually loaned his copy of the deck to Kai Buda for the Sunday PTQ, which is single elimination, as sort of a side event for Pro Tour players. And Kai was able to take down that PTQ as well. So Esper Goryo is certainly a powerful deck and go over the top of what Nadu is doing. But this is a very interactive match for D'Artagnan. And TJ's list has a lot of counter spells, a lot of removal, and in particular, 3 copies of Spell Snare that should be excellent in the matchup.
yeah, I think Spell Snare has gained a lot of momentum over the last few months. The printing of Modern Horizons 3 brought with it a lot of really powerful 2-drops. We were just talking off camera about how good Spell Snare is right now. So seeing 3 copies in the Jeskai control list makes a lot of sense. So apologies, we have a couple of issues with audio. We'll try to get those sorted out as quickly as we can. While we are doing that, though, we're just going to continue on with the coverage, and the players are ready in the feature match area. So why don't we head on down to the feature match area for round number 1. On your right is going to be D'Artagnan Fell on Esper Goryos. On your left is going to be TJ Radizak on Jeskai Control. Wrath of the Sky is quite the card out of the Jeskai Control decks, Ross.
Yeah, and I like that TJ's list has the full 4 copies. I often see 3, and I think it's one of the best cards in the deck. So I like seeing the 4th there. Not particularly relevant in this matchup. You're trying to put 7 and 8 mana creatures onto the battlefield with this Esper Goryos deck, so hard to Wrath of the Skies those. But the Solitudes and the instant speed removal will be relevant.
All right, we're here for turn number 1. Dart's going to start off with a Grief. Pitching a Tainted Indulgence. Sees a hand from TJ. Mostly lands, but a couple, was it Tune
the Narrative.
Tune the Narrative and Memory Deluge. And we're going to go for an Ephemerate and just strip both of those Tune the Narratives away from TJ. And then that Deluge looking like it's going to get hit on the following turn. So a very nice start here for Dart with the full Grief Scam with Ephemerate.
Yeah, so TJ just going to be stuck with some lands here. Going to need to play off the top of this game.
For as much heat Nadu's getting lately, I think Grief needs to be in that conversation as well.
I'm right there with you, Todd. Not a fan.
Yeah.
But I'm sure D'Artagnan is right now.
Yeah. I feel like the card Grief is probably the most aptly named Magic card that's ever existed.
Interesting that D'Artagnan went for a basic Plains on the Marsh Flats.
Well, maybe just has multiple lands in hand to just fetch all basics and not take too much damage. Here's Ephemerate, going to resolve on the Grief. Takes Snapcaster Mage from the hand. Memory Deluge still chilling.
So if TJ can get to turn 5, fire off the Deluge on 4, maybe he can get something going. Ooh, that was a good draw.
Yeah, Flage, a nice pickup. Let's get Flage on screen when we can. This is a lot of Modern Horizons 3 cards here seeing play in Modern. And, Flage is just top-notch in terms of interaction as well as late game for these like fair, interactive, mid-range, and control decks.
Not sure what is left in D'Artagnan's hand. The Plains awkward if he drew a Psychic Frog or a second copy of Tainted Indulgence.
Right.
Of course, the first was exiled to that Grief on turn 1. And not much in the way of proactive cards outside of those Dimir cards and a Goryo's Vengeance, which he hasn't set up with a legendary creature in the graveyard.
Going to go ahead and fetch Undercity Sewers, surveilling the top. Going to put another land into the graveyard. Going to go back Dart's way. Grief is going to be covered next turn by that Flage, unless Dart has something to say about it. We're going to swing in for 3 here. Flage, particularly powerful with the new Surveil lands. Here's a Flagi Archaeologist. Top 3. And that Grief should be tapped. I think it was just accidentally turned when the lands were tapped. Finds Goryo's Vengeance, but no legendary creature just yet.
And note that D'Artagnan was careful to play a swamp first and leave up this plains after the Archaeologist, so could be holding a second copy of Ephemerate. And that will be very good against TJ's Flage.
Agreed. Not only will it prevent the 3 life from being gained, but also it'll strip that Memory Deluge from his hand as well. And perhaps another card that he draws for turn here. So if Dart does have that second Ephemerate, it could be lights out for TJ. Let's see what he finds. We're going to go Thundering Falls, another Surveil land out of the deck, and we're going to take a look at the top card and see if we can find some answers. Surveil 1, look blue like a counterspell. We're going to keep it.
It is a counterspell. That's the Tempest art.
And we're going to pass the turn. TJ not willing to fire that Flage off yet. Maybe thinking that counterspell on the Goryo's Vengeance is his way to get back in the game. Yeah. Another attack for 3. Still has a high life total to work with as well.
I do see a white card in D'Artagnan's hand. Not sure if it is a second Ephemerate or a Prismatic Ending.
Yeah, it has that old border, so I think it might be the Prismatic Ending. I can't remember if they made old border Ephemerate or not. Fetch Flooded Strand. Likely going to go get another Surveil land. Nearly every single deck in Modern and Legacy is playing 2 or more Surveil lands at this point. The strength of them is very high. Here is that old border Ephemerate looking real nice, and I do believe that is what is in Dart's hand.
Yeah, TJ has the 2 Surveil lands. D'Artagnan playing the full 3. No surprise, the graveyard deck wants to max out on those.
Wrath of the Skies, but no energy, so TJ just going to send it back into the grave.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of taking those Tune the Narratives. Not as powerful of a card as Memory Deluge, but it makes TJ's top decks a lot worse. That Wrath of the Skies with only 2 energy would have been pretty good on this battlefield.
All right, Dart draws an Atraxa. That could pair with the Goryo's Vengeance in hand if he can find a way to put it into the graveyard, but we're going to keep on chunking in here with the Grief.
And TJ recognizing that his life total is high enough because the Ephemerate's going to slow down the pressure from Grief. He can just Deluge here on 4 and then turn 5 have Flage plus Counterspell up.
Yeah. Finds an Invert Polarity. That one could be nice for later. And a Galvanic Discharge. So has a lot of answers here for the Grief. We'll see if he's able to fight through the Ephemerate if that's what Dart has. Might not want to bite just yet. Still at 9 life. Can take at least one more hit from the Grief. Could go for a Galvanic Discharge on it, leaving up multiple pieces of interaction.
If he waits one more turn now with the Discharge in hand, TJ can play Flage. If D'Artagnan has Ephemerate, you discharge in response, and then have the counterspell still up for a follow-up threat.
All right, TJ very patient. Has many answers lined up. Gonna go for a Galvanic here. Let's see if Dart has a response.
Okay. Picking the fight on the end step. This is also perfectly reasonable.
This might be mid-combat. I hope it's end step. All right, and it just resolved. So it looks like that Prismatic Ending that we thought was an Ephemerate is confirmed.
Yeah, I have to imagine D'Artagnan would have gone for the Ephemerate, even with the possibility of it getting countered or a second removal spell coming from TJ. You know, that 1-for-1 trade for an Ephemerate would be advantageous for D'Artagnan.
Gonna go fetch out a tapped Hallowed Fountain. We're gonna go back TJ's way in just a moment. And I don't know if we're really planning on doing any more Flage stuff this game. You know, the part that was scary, the Grief, is now over. And now the next part that's going to be scary is Goryo's Vengeance. And so I think you just keep up the shields as much as you can.
But right now, D'Artagnan doesn't even have a creature in the graveyard to reanimate. But there's also not a threat relevant to use the Flage on, so...
And we missed a land drop from TJ, so we're not pushing towards the flashback of Memory Deluge just yet. Handful of counter magic. I see another Galvanic Discharge, Invert Polarity, Counterspell or 2, and a Flage. Dart here with only 3 lands. Hasn't been able to muster much after the triple Grief opener. Maybe this will teach you young whippersnappers at home that you got to have something to back up that triple Grief.
Yeah, I think I see a Solitude and an Atraxa.
Here's another Grief, going to pitch Gristlebrand.
Yeah, looks like D'Artagnan got stuck with several big creatures in hand, so the exiling of the Tainted Indulgence on turn 1 was quite punishing.
All right, invert polarity is going to target this grief that is convoked, and I'm not sure if we want it or not. Nope, it's going to the graveyard, so we can't scam it. But we also didn't get to cast it for free. That would have been fun.
Been pretty cool.
Invert polarity is a really nice card. Gives you the ability to steal your opponent's thing as they cast it, or if you lose the flip, you just counter it. It's like a 50-50 to win the game against the One Ring sometimes.
As a singleton in TJ's list, so unless it gets snapcast later in this game, that's the only invert polarity we will see.
Alright, gonna play Thoughtseize after the grief. Targeting self. Yeah. Gonna reveal a hand with Atraxa, Prismatic, Goryo, Solitude, discarding the Atraxa. And now we're gonna go for the Goryos. Let's see if TJ has the counterspell, and he does.
Yeah, we knew that, and you know, I can understand where D'Artagnan's coming from with that play. You haven't really done much. That's what you have. You know, your opponent just used a counterspell, but they have a bunch of cards in hand. They still have the 2 mana up. I think that's a spot where you have to just be patient.
Alright, well, TJ knows that it's impossible to get killed next turn thanks to the counterspell in his hand and the known quantities of his opponent's hand. And going to go ahead and flage down that creature and still hold up counterspell. Dart finds a shadowy backstreet that's going to surveil and leave on top. Potentially scary for TJ if not for that counterspell.
Yeah, he's got counterspell. He's going to be able to escape the flage this turn, and that is a very fast clock. Ooh.
Yeah, chooses not to, though. Going to say, hey, you got to do something now or you're in trouble. And if you don't do anything relevant, I'm going to...
wants to flash back the deluge first. That makes sense.
Top 3 finds another Goryo, Ephemerate, and another Goryo. We're going to put that one in hand. And maybe is going to pass turn. TJ doesn't fall for it.
Yeah, that is awkward for the line that TJ took. So he now can't tap out for the deluge, has to hold up the counterspell, but still has flage here.
Yep, we're going to go ahead and play the flage from the graveyard. Red, red, white, white, going to exile 5.
Yeah, this is going to end up giving D'Artagnan 1 extra turn. If TJ had flage last turn, his clock would be a little bit faster, but still in the driver's seat.
We're going to go ahead and go after the Philology Archaeologist to clear blockers. TJ going to go up to 14. Still has counterspell at the ready, so if I'm Dart here, I'm probably going to get EOT Goryos. It's not going to work.
And there's only 1 Goryos left in the deck, since there were 2 milled off that Archaeologist last turn.
We can get a good look. Look like a multicolor card, maybe a Tainted Indulgence. Maybe a... I know there's the black-white Aristocrat that brings creatures back to the graveyard.
Yeah, there's 2 copies of Priest of Felrights in the deck as well.
Okay, it was a Tainted. We're going to draw 2, discard 1, or draw 2 if we have the requirements of Tainted Indulgence, which I believe is 5 different mana values.
It is, and
it looks like we got it.
A land would do
7.
it.
Yeah, plenty. All right, draw 2, no discard.
Didn't get a good look at them. I think there's another copy of Tainted Indulgence there. There's a Solitude in D'Artagnan's hand, so that can answer the flage.
Looks like Dart is probably going to Solitude, but we're going to wait. Could have gone for a Prismatic Ending as well, I believe. Black, white, blue. Maybe just wants to soak this one and go for end of turn Tainted Indulgence and try to put something together on the following turn.
D'Artagnan going to fall to 7 there, so the flage is a lethal attacker next turn.
Alright, back to Dart. Custer's last stand. See if he can find some way to stop this flage. We know he's got a Solitude. Does he play it here for 5 or for free? We're going to go for a Prismatic Ending instead. And that does it. No response from TJ. Now we got some time. TJ going for another Deluge. Top 4 going to put 2 in hand.
Could have gone for the flashback on the graveyard.
Guess you maybe get bit by Goryos if you do that.
There's only 1 more in the deck, though, and D'Artagnan has been pretty aggressive in casting them.
That's true. Blind Spell Snare, I think, does TJ. So Dart gonna need the last Goryo plus a discard effect here to force through. Maybe we can hardcast one of those big baddies in a few turns. I think fetches another Surveil land, and if this is the green one, then we have a Traxa mana and one more land.
Well, what Dart really needs is a Priest of Fell Rites. That's your best reanimation spell against counters.
Alright. Surveil. Included Delta to the graveyard. Gonna go back to Dart. I see Solitude. Thought I saw a Thoughtseize. I do, but he's thinking about waiting. Maybe wants to wait until he has something important to do before casting it, but I'm gonna go ahead and fire it off here. Seize. Dress Down, Galvanic Discharge, and Spell Snare. Dress Down and Spell Snare, both potentially problematic for him.
Yeah, neither good to see, and it's also awkward to Thoughtseize before a flashback deluge. So you're not going to get to see any of the cards that TJ finds off of the top 7.
And he passes back. TJ here going to go ahead and fetch in a turn. Don't think he's got any more Surveil lands left, but...
No, TJ just has 2. D'Artagnan actually has 4. He's got the 3 Esper ones and an Underground Mortuary.
And he just packs it in. Doesn't think he's going to come close to winning and knows the deluge is coming. I don't mind it. At 4 life. Only one Goryo's left. You know there's a Spell Snare over there.
Ryan Overturf would call that a tight concession.
That's true. All right, well, as these players reach forward their sideboards, I'm going to reach over across the table and ask my man Ross, give me your expert opinion on how you think D'Artagnan is going to approach this matchup after sideboard with Esper Goryo.
So, D'Artagnan's sideboard is 2 copies of Blossoming Calm, 2 Celestial Purge, 2 Consigned to Memory, 2 Drannith Magistrate, 2 Force Negation, 2 Nile Spellbomb, 1 Teferi Time Raveler, and 2 Wrath of the Skies. I would expect, given that there's a lot of spot removal in the main deck, 3 Solitude, 3 Prismatic Ending, that are relatively weak, that you would bring in Teferi and Force Negation to fight opposing counter spells, especially with Goryo's Vengeance being instant. You can pick the fight on your opponent's turn and pitch cast Force Negation defensively.
Yeah, the same way the old Violent Outburst decks used to do.
Exactly. And then I think I would also like the 2 copies of Nile Spellbomb. Tagging Phlages and tagging Flashback on Memory Deluge. That's the end game for this Jeskai control deck. And if you're able to take away that end game, you can play with them and start hard casting your big spells, hard casting Griefs, playing Psychic Frogs, and just sort of grind through their interaction.
One question I think some people might ask is like, yes, there's Nihil Spellbomb, but why would you bring in Nihil Spellbomb but maybe not bring in something like Leyline of the Void?
So Spellbomb has a much higher floor than a card like Leyline because it draws a card. So even if you're not getting a lot of value out of the graveyard hate aspect of the card, you're still just spending 2 mana and replacing the card with something else and digging through your deck. And the fact that this matchup is going to go long means that you can afford to spend a little mana spinning your wheels, and then you get the upside of being able to tag those powerful graveyard cards.
All right, on the other side of the table, TJ Radizak, what's he looking at?
So his sideboard is 2 copies of Celestial Purge, 3 Consigned to Memory, 2 Obsidian Charmaw, 2 Supreme Verdict, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Teferi Time Raveler, and 2 Unlicensed Hearse. The 4 graveyard hate cards are certainly coming in. That is a high number and a good look for TJ in this matchup. I could see a couple copies of Teferi coming in just to stop the end of turn shenanigans with Goryo's Vengeance. And I think Celestial Purge is likely better than the other spot removal spells in the deck. It hits a Grief, it hits Atraxa, it hits Gristlebrand, it hits Psychic Frog. So it hits all the things that you need it to hit. So that's likely better than some number of Prismatic Endings, Solitudes, or Galvanic Discharges.
All right, well, as these players are finishing up sideboarding, I'd like to take this time to say thank you to our sponsors for this weekend's festivities. Apex Con is sponsored by Wings Etc. Grill and Pub. Wings Etc. is a great restaurant to take friends and family for some good food and fun times. Ross and I will probably be there later tonight, hanging out with the big boss man and family.
We will definitely be there.
And we're going to get us some cauliflower wings, maybe hit the wall. The wall wings are pretty good.
I will not be doing that.
Yeah. I tried one wall wing once, and you have to eat 15 to get on the wall. They're like super spicy wings challenge. And I ate one, and it was fine. I just don't want to eat 15 of them.
Yeah.
Just too many wings. 16
16.
wings. Excuse me.
Oof.
Excuse me. I forgot we go multiples of 4 around here. Thank you so much to SpiceRack.gg. SpiceRack is brand new tournament software that we've been working with here at Apex Gaming to bring you these excellent tournaments. If you are a tournament organizer, own a store, check out SpiceRack.gg, or maybe if you have already used SpiceRack before, maybe talk to your local game store about it and see if they'd like to sign up. We've been very happy with the progress that SpiceRack has been making here in terms of making unique and useful features here for our tournament software. Thank you so much to Ultimate Guard. Ultimate Guard is the industry leader when it comes to TCG supplies, from the Boulder deck box to the Katana sleeves. Make sure to check out your local game store for Ultimate Guard products today, and if they don't have any, well, ask them why. And also thank you so much to Ghost Energy. Ghost Energy is a delicious energy drink company. I'm drinking one right now. Tropical Mango, Ghost Energy Zero Sugar. Sign me up. Give me another one. Ghost Energy. All right, we're here underway for game number 2. Dart leads with Surveil Land. Leaves on top. TJ with Ragon Triumph. We're going to go back to Dart. Plays Watergrave untapped. Here's Philology Archaeologist, top 3. Let's get Philology on the screen, because this is secretly one of the better cards in the deck, even though it kind of looks wonky. But we do find Goryo's Vengeance. Excellent find.
And the only option there in that set of 3 with Hallowed Fountain and Psychic Frog going to the graveyard.
Archaeologist, reminiscent of that long line of creatures like Augur of Bolus. Enter the battlefield, look at the top X, put them on the bottom. You know, that's usually how it goes for me.
Yeah, but this one, putting the cards in the graveyard,
yes,
is a big deal.
Agreed. And it's a great ephemerate target as well when you're kind of going that middle of the road.
Oof.
Goryo's Vengeance, the fine, but a nice counter from TJ. That's going to be Unlicensed Hearse. That's going to eat up the graveyard slowly but surely, and then maybe eventually close the game by attacking with a big old truck.
Let's see if D'Artagnan left in some number of those prismatic endings expecting these hearses, or it's just going to get caught unprepared and have to win this game without using his graveyard.
Even if it's not Hearse specifically, it's usually Rest in Peace. But I think you have to understand that everyone is going to have something against you. And so you got to try to figure out what that something is. And you know TJ had Memory Deluge and Flage. So maybe you think, oh, it's only Surgical Extraction. And then you side out all of your answers to the Unlicensed Hearse and lose to it.
Hearse, a very strong option here, and smart on TJ to not play the Rest in Pieces that have such negative synergy with his own deck.
Is that dysynergy? Is that a word?
Yes.
Nice. Sometimes I remember the things I read as a child. Fairy Time Raveler.
Right, so the Singleton Teferi does come in from the sideboard for D'Artagnan, and that could also set up a kill through the Hearse. See, D'Artagnan pluses Teferi there, could next turn bounce the Hearse, then play something like a Tainted Indulgence or a Psychic Frog to get a card in his graveyard to reanimate with the Goryo's Vengeance that we know he has.
Yeah, it's also just an excellent card against Jeskai control. You saw game 1, TJ was just completely reliant on counterspell, things at instant speed, and Teferi shuts all that down. Here's a Flage, though. That's going to be a sorcery speed. We're going to deal 3 damage to the Teferi, and then it's going to go to the graveyard, and we're going to gain 3 life. Maybe going to come back later to finish off that Teferi, but for now, the Teferi's in effect. Dart needs to get this Unlicensed Hearse off the table, but Teferi no longer able to do that.
Yeah, going to take him a couple turns to plus this Teferi up to 4, then -3 to bounce the Hearse while keeping the Teferi around to protect against counter spells from TJ. So the Flage buys TJ quite a lot of time here.
Important to note also, Galvanic Discharge can hit Planeswalkers, and the Esper Goryo's decks can operate at instant speed to put things onto the battlefield and ephemerate them. So, because of that, TJ's Hearse is not guaranteed to be great, especially if he just wants to chip away at the graveyard. He might not even activate it here on the end step to make sure that he has it active for that instant speed Goryo potential. We're going to go fetching here. This looks like a main phase fetch. If he has something like Goryo's in hand, you can always fetch Surveil Lands looking at the top card to see if it's one of your big baddies to put into the graveyard.
But of course, Hearse means that line is not advisable. This could just be a hard cast Grief.
Could be hard cast Grief.
Yeah, I see Grief at the front of D'Artagnan's hand. There we go.
Alrighty. Taps 4. Paying the hard way. Sees a hand. 2 Snapcaster Mage. Counterspell, Solitude, and the...
Meticulous Archive.
I was getting there. Okay, so what do you take here for your Dart? None of these cards really matter too much. Snapcasters have no target. Solitude is whatever. You know, is it just Counterspell for later?
Well, with the Teferi in play, the Snapcasters and Counterspell are not that threatening. So yeah, I like taking the Solitude here. We can start beating down with this Grief.
All right, no mana left for Dart, though, so now we can eat 2 more cards, keep growing the hearse, making sure that there's nothing too tricky going on over there.
And even if Snapcaster isn't flashing anything back, it can crew the hearse.
Well, that was the perfect top deck. Now we got Galvanic Discharge. That's going to kill Teferi. And then we're going to probably go Snapcaster Mage, Galvanic Discharge, kill Grief while the shields are down.
Oh, can't do that since his Archive is going to enter tapped.
Good call, good call.
But
maybe for next
does now have the Counterspell up because Teferi is no longer on the battlefield.
Yep.
So yeah, that Discharge was the perfect draw for TJ. Ooh.
Does Ben an Atraxa, and if TJ goes to exile it here, Dart can just reanimate in response with Goryo. TJ will have Counterspell at the ready, so he can force the fight, but 2 Goryo for Dart could be a little dicey, except we drew Spell Snare, so now everything's covered.
It's pretty good. Ooh.
Is this this might be a draw step ephemerate, but it could also be an end step ephemerate.
It's an end step. TJ drew that it looks like he passed the turn.
Okay. Snapcaster Mage in response to the ephemerate. It looks like we're going to go for Snap Discharge instead of Counterspell, because this allows us to still hold up Spell Snare, and Dart doesn't know about the Spell Snare, so he might go for a Goryo's next turn.
TJ going to have 1 energy left over from Discharge. That Discharge should be exiled. Come on, TJ.
All right, Director Man, go get him. Bark, 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 bark.
Get out of the tournament.
Yeah, it was.
No tolerance.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah. Get him out of here.
Get him a body bag.
All right. Game state fixed. Back Dart's way.
That's a Force of Negation for D'Artagnan, so... Yeah, but doesn't have a way to get around the hearse still.
And TJ is disciplined enough not to start the fight by targeting it with the hearse.
Looks like D'Artagnan's hand is Atraxa, Tainted Indulgence, Force of Negation, and the Goryo's Vengeance.
All right, draws for turn and says go. Here's end of turn Tainted Indulgence from Dart. Gonna draw 2, discard 1.
I think there was another Indulgence off the top. And so you want to discard the Atraxa, but then you potentially lose 2 of your big creatures to a single hearse activation, which is not ideal.
Yeah, you can also hold that Atraxa and pitch it to the Force of Negation. I think TJ's in a really good spot here, but you have to play this extremely tight.
Yeah, his one issue is he's not making land drops at this point.
Right. But he is drawing a lot of answers to all of the reanimator stuff.
Yeah, but he's going to need to hit a few more land drops so he can redeploy the Flage from the graveyard and start closing this game.
You don't think Snapcaster is enough to close the game?
Not against an 0-3.
0-3 doing work.
Yeah,
right.
Otherwise I'd say he's fine. Just 7 turns, we're done.
Discards Philology. Gonna go back to Dart. Finds, I think, another Tainted Indulgence. Now with multiple counterspells up, TJ might go to exile here and start the fight. I don't love doing that, though. Again, you just don't want... Oh, he's just going to let it happen.
And with the Force Negation in hand, that was an appealing turn for D'Artagnan to go for it. We, of course, know it wouldn't have worked, but would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, he just says go. I think he's got another Taint Indulgence. Maybe he was planning on putting another one in the graveyard and going for it then, but I think you should have just gone for the Goryo when the shields were down there. You're going to lose the fight, but you burn a lot of TJ's resources for basically no cost to yourself because the Trax is already dead weight in the graveyard.
He's not burning it. He's just trading resources, though.
Right, but if TJ starts the fight, you should fight back.
He gets to immediately reestablish the creature in the graveyard.
Well, I also think TJ maybe should have eaten it right there with the 2 mana left. Or 2 mana more tapped.
That's a scary proposition, doing it on your own end step and giving D'Artagnan an untap.
Yeah, that's fair. Priest of Fell Rights. So it could be pretty solid next turn, but I mean, this Hearse now with so many counterspells in hand, TJ can just say that resolves in a turn, eat your thing, protect from
Priest attack. Very good against counterspells, weak against Hearse. So D'Artagnan could go for an activation next turn. TJ responds with Hearse activation on the Priest and the target of the Priest's activated ability. D'Artagnan responds with Goryo's Vengeance, and TJ wins the counter war and cleans everything up.
Are we going to go EOT, Snapcaster Mage?
Yeah.
Discharge is going to go after the Priest.
Leaving another energy left over.
Yeah, and with only 2 mana up here, not enough to start the fight, so my guess is going to...
Go.
Yeah. Finds Thundering Falls, going to go Surveillance.
And this is a strong signal to D'Artagnan that there is a Spell Snare in TJ's hand, which is not a card he has seen as of yet. No way TJ would have left himself only 1 mana up with a counterspell and not a Spell Snare.
Well, with the Hearse activation, right? Maybe you don't know that for sure. There's an attack for 4. 2 of it's going to get blocked. Dart's going to go to 12.
Okay, so 1 Snapcaster Mage wasn't enough, but 2. We're good to go.
Now, how do you feel about, on your own turn, Hearse targeting Priest and the Atraxa?
Still not a fan of doing things on my own turn. You know, D'Artagnan can activate the Unearth ability here, and you can just respond to that.
Well, Unearth, I think it's already in play, or it's already going...
Activation is just the mana cost, returning it as part of the resolution.
Okay, so it pays the 5. TJ says in response, I'm going to play Dress Down, so that will shut down the Priest. I believe Priest is Sorcerer Speed only, so that's going to be a nice answer for it as well.
Yeah, Priest can only be activated as a sorcery, so yeah, the Dress Down also takes care of the Priest. Digs TJ to more interaction. It's very nice patient play here from TJ this entire game.
Yeah. So they're going to get confirmation on what happens to the Priest after the Dress Down removes the abilities. I believe it will still get exiled because it's like a cost of the Unearth ability.
Yeah, it's not an ability of the creature. Yeah. It is part of what Unearth does.
Yeah, I think the same happens for things like Through the Breach and... You know, if it says I have to get sacked in a turn, it gets sacked in a turn no matter what.
When you Dress Down an Unearthed Ragavan,
right, it still bounces.
It still gets returned.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, it's a delayed trigger set up by the Unearthed activation.
I think the players here are talking to the judge now just to get confirmation on how this interaction works. We'll make sure they get a 2-minute time extension afterwards. Maybe 1 minute.
I don't think they're going to need it, Todd.
Well, sure. All right, here's Tune. We're going to draw a card and make some energy. Finds a Flage, so maybe we can start closing. Okay, we already had a Flage, excuse me. Now we are going to go into turn, eat some stuff. TJ now says, I have it covered.
Yeah, with only 2 mana up for D'Artagnan because of the 5 mana he needed to commit for the Priest. This is a lot easier.
Yeah, you can't lose to Force when it's your opponent's end step.
And Flage should be lethal here, right? We can kill the Archaeologist, use the Flage to crew an 8/8 and attack for 12. Yeah, could have gone for lethal, but TJ once again being patient.
I don't think that he can possibly lose, so it would take. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see. But
It would have been lethal with a counter spell up against 2 mana.
is that good enough against the deck with Solitude in it? Maybe not.
Does it have Solitude in it right now?
Maybe not. Looted Delta. We're gonna hard cast Atraxa from hand. Can't imagine this one's gonna stick, but
Yeah.
you know
How
what?
about counterspell?
How about just kudos to Dart though for trying, you know? I've hard casted Gristlebrand before and I got dazed. So I feel the pain on that one.
Not ideal. Okay, so Hearst's gonna clean up the Atraxa in the graveyard after getting countered. And now TJ can also cast the Memory Deluge from hand.
It's all over but the crying. Top 4. Solitude. Tune, another Flage. Pick 2 at random.
Gotta milk that camera time.
Don't I know it?
TJ's had a tough go of it in our events recently, so nice to see him come out with a strong start here.
You know, whenever I'm having a rough run, I also shave my head. So, and it works. Clean, fresh start. All right, 3 mana. Gonna go for Flage
Yeah, I think
from hand.
now it's go for lethal time.
Yeah. Dart packs it in. TJ Razak takes it 2-0.